Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel tonight. I want you to picture a place you've probably visited dozens of times without a second thought. Bright lights, music drifting through the air, polished floors reflecting storefront signs, families laughing, teenagers hanging out, security guards walking their usual paths. A shopping mall feels safe. It feels controlled. It feels like nothing truly terrible could ever happen there. But sometimes horror doesn't hide in abandoned houses or empty forests. Sometimes it waits right in the middle of a crowded, familiar place. What you're about to hear are 3 disturbing true mall horror stories, events that happened in real shopping centers, to real people, and left scars that never fully faded. These aren't urban legends. These are moments that shattered the illusion of safety forever. The first story took place in the late 1990s at a suburban shopping mall that had been a local favorite for decades. It wasn't a massive mega mall, just a typical 2-level building with a food court in the middle, a movie theater on one end, and department stores anchoring each side. On a Saturday afternoon, the mall was packed. Parents pushed strollers, couples browsed clothing stores, and kids begged for snacks and arcade tokens. Among them was a young woman in her early 20s who had gone there alone to shop for birthday gifts. She told friends later that she remembered feeling slightly uneasy that day, though she couldn't explain why. The mall felt louder than usual, and the lighting in certain hallways seemed dimmer, almost flickering. At some point, she realized she needed to use the restroom. She followed the signs to the women's bathroom near a quiet wing of the mall, an area that hadn't been renovated in years. The tile was cracked, the lights buzzed faintly overhead, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals mixed with something musty. She entered, checked that no one else appeared to be inside, and stepped into a stall. What happened next is something she would struggle to explain for the rest of her life. As she sat there, she heard the restroom door open slowly. Footsteps entered, heavy and deliberate, not the light steps of someone in a hurry. She assumed another shopper had come in and tried to ignore it, but the footsteps didn't move toward a sink or another stall. They stopped just outside her stall door. She froze. Through the gap beneath the door, she could see a pair of shoes, scuffed and dirty, facing directly toward her. She coughed lightly, hoping the person would realize the stall was occupied and step away. Instead, the shoes moved closer. Then she heard breathing, slow, deep breathing, right on the other side of the thin metal door. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure the person could hear it. She whispered, "Someone's in here," her voice barely louder than the buzz of the lights. There was no response. The breathing continued, growing slightly heavier, like whoever was standing there was enjoying her fear. Suddenly, a hand appeared at the top of the stall door, fingers curling over the edge. It wasn't trying to break in. It just rested there, as if testing the space, as if reminding her that the barrier between them was thin and fragile. She screamed. The sound echoed off the tiled walls, sharp and panicked. The hand disappeared instantly, footsteps rushed away, and the restroom door slammed shut. Shaking, she waited several minutes before opening the stall door. The restroom was empty. She ran back into the main mall area and found a security guard, barely able to form words as she explained what had happened. They reviewed the hallway cameras, but the angle didn't clearly show the restroom entrance. The footage only showed a man in a dark jacket lingering nearby for several minutes before casually walking away. He was never identified. Years later, she admitted something that made the story even more chilling. Just before the hand appeared, she had noticed something carved into the inside of the stall door. It was faint and scratched deeply into the metal, likely done with a key. 3 words, "I see you." She never used a public restroom alone again, and even now, The sound of slow breathing behind her in a quiet space sends her into a panic. The second story comes from the early 2000s and involves a shopping mall that had recently begun struggling financially. Several stores had closed, leaving dark, empty units scattered throughout the building. One section of the mall, in particular, was noticeably quieter than the rest, with dim lights and a strange echo that made footsteps sound louder and closer than they really were. A group of 3 teenage friends often used the mall as a hangout spot, especially during the summer when they wanted to escape the heat. One afternoon, they wandered into the quieter wing, joking and filming short videos on a cheap handheld camcorder, laughing about how creepy it felt. At the end of the hallway was an abandoned clothing store, its metal gate pulled halfway down. The store interior was dark, but not completely empty. Through the gaps in the gate, they could see racks still standing and mannequins frozen in place, their blank faces barely visible in the shadows. One of the teenagers dared the others to lift the gate and step inside. At first they refused, but after a few moments of laughter, curiosity won. They lifted the gate just enough to squeeze under and stepped inside, using the camcorder's small light to see. The air inside was stale and noticeably colder than the rest of the mall. Dust hung thick in the air, and their footsteps sounded unnaturally loud. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then they noticed something strange. One of the mannequins appeared to be positioned differently than the others. Its head was slightly tilted, as if it were watching them. They laughed nervously, assuming someone must have moved it before the store closed. But as they walked deeper inside, they began noticing more odd details. Some mannequins had faint scratches on their plastic faces. Others had marker drawn around their eyes, dark circles that made them look hollow and exhausted. Suddenly, the light from the camcorder flickered, then steadied. That's when they heard a noise, a faint shuffling sound coming from the back of the store. They froze. One of them whispered that it was probably just rats. But the sound was too heavy, too slow, and it stopped whenever they stopped moving, as if it were listening. They decided to leave. As they turned toward the gate, they realized with a surge of panic that it was no longer lifted enough to escape. It had been lowered further somehow. None of them admitted it at the time, but each of them later said the same thing. They felt watched. Not by the mannequins, but by something moving behind them. That's when one of the mannequins fell over. It didn't topple forward naturally. It fell sideways as if it had been pushed. They screamed and rushed the gate, lifting it with frantic strength until they could crawl out. They didn't stop running until they were surrounded by other shoppers. Mall security investigated after the teens reported what happened. Inside the abandoned store, they found something far worse than prank vandalism. Hidden in a back storage room was a makeshift living space. A sleeping bag, old food wrappers, empty water bottles, and crude drawings covering the walls. The drawings depicted mannequins with human faces, eyes scratched out, mouths sewn shut. There was no sign of the person who had been living there. Mall management quietly sealed off the entire wing shortly after. Years later, when one of the teens revisited the story online, a former security guard commented anonymously. He claimed there had been reports of a transient individual living in the mall walls for months, possibly longer. He also claimed that when security reviewed old footage, mannequins inside that store appeared to be repositioned overnight, even when no one was recorded entering. Whether that part was true or not, the friends never returned to that mall again. The third story is perhaps the most disturbing, because it didn't happen in a quiet or abandoned place. It happened during a busy holiday season at a large, modern mall filled with thousands of shoppers. It began with multiple reports of a strange smell near the children's play area. At first, Mall management assumed it was a plumbing issue or spoiled food from a nearby restaurant. Maintenance crews were called, air fresheners were sprayed, and the reports temporarily stopped. But over the next few days, the smell returned, stronger each time. Parents complained, children felt nauseous, and some stores in the area reported customers leaving early. The smell was described as sweet at first, then overwhelming, then rotten. Security began investigating storage rooms, trash compactors, and ventilation systems, but found nothing. One evening, after closing, a janitorial worker noticed a strange liquid seeping from beneath one of the play area structures. It was thick, dark, and foul, smelling. Horrified, he reported it immediately. The mall was closed the following day under the pretense of maintenance issues. What investigators discovered was something that shocked even seasoned professionals. Hidden inside a crawl space beneath the play area was the body of a missing person who had last been seen at the mall weeks earlier. Further investigation revealed that the individual had not died naturally. Evidence suggested foul play, and even more disturbing, it appeared the body had been intentionally concealed in a place where children played every day. The mall never released full details to the public. Local news reported the discovery briefly before the story disappeared from headlines. The play area was permanently removed, and the mall underwent a quiet renovation. Many employees quit shortly afterward, unable to shake the feeling that they had unknowingly worked above something so horrifying. Parents who had brought their children to that play area spoke years later about the guilt they felt, about how close they had been to something unspeakable without ever knowing it. Some claimed their kids had complained about a bad smell monster under the floor. At the time, it had seemed like childish imagination. In hindsight, it felt like a warning that came too late. Malls are designed to feel safe. Bright colors, music, open spaces, all meant to keep fear far away. But these stories prove something unsettling. Horror doesn't always announce itself with darkness and silence. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, surrounded by everyday life, waiting for the moment when no one is paying attention. The next time you walk through a mall, glance down those quiet hallways, pay attention to the places most people avoid, because sometimes the scariest things are closer than we think. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for listening. If these stories stayed with you, consider liking the video and sharing it with someone who loves true horror as much as you do. And don't forget to subscribe, because there are many more stories waiting to be told. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and I'll see you again soon.